God, I love taking bubble baths with all of my clothes on.
Chase, it's been a month. Make a video.
Shit.
Slasher movies have always been a staple genre of horror ever since the 1970s, and it's also a genre that's been driven into the ground with a ridiculous number of sequels and imitators. All you really need for one of these things is a guy in a mask, idiot teenagers, and the budget of coins in your couch, and boom, you have a slasher. And I ate this shit up when I was young. These used to be my favorite types of movies to watch, and even today I still have a soft spot for them. But even now, I still need a little something extra to keep my attention, and that's where our pizza-faced killer comes into this. A Nightmare on Elm Street has always been my favorite of these series because of the variety these movies bring. Like, even the shitty ones have something ridiculous to make them stand out. But then again, it's been a very long time since I rewatched these movies. Maybe my opinion has changed? Well, there's no time like the present. Welcome to prime time, bitch. This is A Nightmare on Elm Street.
The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
She's the only one who can stop it. If she fails,
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
no one will survive. From Wes Craven, director of The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left, a new masterpiece in fantasy terror, Nightmare on Elm Street.
A Nightmare on Elm Street was released in 1984 and was written and directed by Wes Craven. This movie actually used to be my favorite movie of all time when I was young, and while I don't hold it that high up anymore, there's certainly a lot to like about it. Nancy Thompson, in my opinion, is one of the best characters in any horror movie. She's up there with Ripley from Alien, which is some pretty high praise. She's always in charge, doesn't take shit from anyone, and is constantly going toe-to-toe with Freddy. It's also great that there's a 15-minute fake out where you think Tina is going to be the final girl, only to have her die a gruesome death. Like, holy shit, in an era where the worst deaths were a throat slit, this is just another level. In fact, the effects are really impressive. Of course, the standout is watching Johnny Depp get sucked into his bed and having a fucking geyser of blood come out. I mean, this is a Wes Craven film, I expected nothing less. I also love all the dream imagery, like Tina in the body bag or Freddy's glove coming out of the bathtub. It's some really great stuff. And of course, I can't talk about this movie without talking about Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. He is the only reason I can still tolerate the bad movies in this series because of the amazing energy he brings to this role. Every scene he's in, he completely steals the show, and I love him for that. And this is definitely one of his scarier appearances in the franchise. I really like this gremlin type laugh that Freddy does that he will never have again. He doesn't have as many one-liners in this movie as he does in the later ones, but I do love how he's always smiling and laughing and fucking with his victims. He's got this twisted sense of humor that just makes him creepier. Like how he cuts off his own fingers and slices open his stomach because he thinks it's funny. So yeah, this movie's an absolute classic, not much more to say. Well, except for the stuff I don't like about it. Listen, I love this movie, but when you've seen it as much as I have, you tend to notice some of the weirder stuff. Like some of the acting is a little off.
You feel better now, right?
Jungle Man fixed Jane.
I had a hard-on this morning when I woke up, Tina. Had your name written all over it. Hey, up yours with a twirling lawnmower.
I mean, it was the early 80s, and a lot of movies had these things, but I just think it means it's aged. It's aged well, but it's aged regardless. One thing I can definitely say is that I don't like the ending. I still don't get it. I know Wes Craven didn't write this, it was purely an attempt to leave the ending open for sequels, but it's still really confusing and none of the following movies are gonna explain it either. Like, is it a dream? Did everything get reset just to happen again? Did this even happen in the first place?
What's the answer?
But most of these things are just nitpicks. This is just a really solid horror film, and while it has aged a bit, it still holds up pretty well. I just couldn't help but be really invested with these characters on this rewatch, and hearing Charles Bernstein's score while watching these kids be creatively murdered by a guy who looks like pepperoni pizza will never get old to me. And it's as simple as that. There's a reason why this movie's a classic, and it shouldn't be understated. I think it's great. But now for the sequel.
Someone is coming back to Elm Street. He is not friendly. He is not patient.
Kill for me.
And he is not a welcome visitor. But he has something terribly special for the new kid on the block.
It started to happen again.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2.
You are all my children now.
Freddys Revenge.
A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddys Revenge, was released in 1985, and this is definitely the black sheep of the series, and you can tell just by watching it. This movie is really fucking weird, and I kinda love it. I mean, after so many of these movies just do the same fucking thing over and over again, this one breaks the mold, in good ways and in bad ways. The biggest issue I have with it is its pacing, because it's really fucking slow. Major things don't start happening until halfway through the film. Most of the runtime is taken up by Jesse walking around, seeing Freddy for a second, and waking up sweaty in his bed. In fact, this movie is really sweaty for some reason. Even the characters comment on it.
My God, it is hot as an oven in here.
Something I do really enjoy is Mark Patton's performance as Jesse. He does a really good job of showing how fucking insane his situation is, and he puts a lot of emotion into his lines.
I killed Grady. I killed Grady. Lisa, I killed Snyder. Oh my God. I'm so scared.
The supporting characters aren't bad either. I like Grady and his relationship with Jesse, and it was kinda sad to see him get killed off, even if it was a really cool scene. Lisa's alright, she's a little annoying. As soon as the climax happens, she spends so much time excessively crying.
Jesse, this is not happening. Oh, God.
Other than that, Coach Snyder is really weird. There's a scene where he finds Jesse at a gay bar and he takes him to the gym to run laps for some reason. He's then killed by whipping his ass with towels. Okay, maybe I should stop dancing around the obvious. This movie's really gay. Like, really gay. There's a lot of queer undertones that a lot of the people who worked on this movie claim they didn't intentionally include, but I kinda doubt that, because you watch the movie and you go, well, how the hell did they not notice? And I'm not saying it as a negative or a criticism of the movie. In fact, I think it gives it more of an identity compared to the later sequels. I'm not going to speak too much on it because there's a whole documentary made by Mark Patton about this movie and its subject matter, so if you want to learn more about it, then go watch it. It's pretty good. Instead, I'm going to talk about our boy Freddy. This is probably the most serious he's ever been until the remake. He doesn't crack a smile nearly as much, but he does have some cool one-liners.
You've got the body. I've got the brain.
He's a lot more vicious in this one. Freddy's never been one to go on massive killing sprees. He usually likes to pick off his victims one by one, but if you ever wanted to see him go full Jason Voorhees on a group of people, then look no further than the pool party scene. It is pretty cool, but it does really highlight how loosely they follow the rules of the original. The first film taught us that Freddy is only vulnerable in the real world, but now he's stronger in the real world? He wants Jesse to kill for him, but what happened to killing kids in their dreams? Wasn't that like your whole thing? So, as a sequel, this movie's kind of mediocre. It's definitely not bad. In fact, I like it more than the later ones, but there's definitely a reason not a lot of people remember this one or skip it on a rewatch. There's great effects, decent performances, and some really cool kills, but has weaker characters, doesn't really make sense, and has really slow pacing. It's good, but not great. But now for the one I've been waiting for.
Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. Freddy's just around the corner.
A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors was released in 1987 and is the best in the entire series. And I wasn't prepared to say that. I thought the purist in me was going to say that the original was better, but I had more fun rewatching this one. And the thing I can easily point to as to why is the characters. This is easily the best set of characters in the entire franchise. They're just so easy to relate to and sympathize, and making them all mentally ill kids who just have each other to try to survive really helps with this. I love how they take shifts watching each other sleep to make sure that they're alright. It makes you really damn bummed when they don't make it out alive, because you get pretty attached to these guys. And of course, there's the return of Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thompson. If there's one trope in horror movie sequels that I love, it's the seasoned veteran who helps train the next generation to fight the monster, and they do it so well here. The way she interacts and helps with the kids in the mental institution really shows how far her character has come since the original. And the new final girl, Kristen Parker, is no slouch either. I really like her relationship with Nancy and how they bond over being tormented by Freddy. And her performance by Patricia Arquette is great. Just look at the scene where she has Nancy in her arms as she dies.
I won't let you die. I won't let you. I'm gonna dream you into a beautiful dream. Forever and ever.
And hey, if you only watch these movies for the kills, then you're also set. This movie has probably the most gruesome death in the entire series, where Freddy uses Philip's appendages to walk him around like a marionette, and makes him jump off a tower while his friends helplessly watch. Like, holy shit, that's so fucked up, but it's kinda awesome. The effects are incredibly good this time around. Some look better than others, but it's insane what they managed to do with what they had. And it really helps that Freddy is still scary. He got a big boost to his one-liners, and there's a lot more this time around.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
What's wrong, Joey? Feeling tongue-tied?
He's not quite yet at the Bugs Bunny level yet, but that's a good thing. This is the perfect amount of comedy that still makes him scary enough to take him seriously. Although, there's a few too many times where they just forget to pitch down his voice in certain scenes, so it's just kind of Robert Englund talking normally.
Why should we fight? We're all friends, you and I. Always room for more.
As for things I don't like about this movie, well, there's a couple. I think it can be a little too goofy sometimes, like with Will being the Wizard Master. I get it, it's his dream power, but it looks a little silly. I also think trying to expand the Freddy lore with his mother being a ghost or something was a little unnecessary. I hate it when slasher movies try so hard to explain their villain when they're so much more scary when they're a mystery. I mean, at least we're not at Halloween Thorn levels yet. But other than that, I really like Dream Warriors. I've been taking notes for my rewatches of these movies, and I got so invested watching this one that I completely forgot to take notes. I would put it up there with the original Halloween and Scream as one of my favorite slasher movies. So, how did the next one fuck it up?
Do you know what terror is?
Hello.
Do you live here?
Nobody lives here.
Real terror. How long has it been since you've been on Elm Street? Welcome to a brand new nightmare. Get ready. This August, your wildest dreams will come true.
How sweet. Fresh meat.
A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. The Dream Master.
A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, was released in 1988, and yeah, I don't like this one. If you want an example of a sequel that takes a big, steamy dump all over its predecessor, then this movie would win the award 3 years in a row. I know that it's kind of controversial considering that this is a lot of people's favorite, but it just does not do it for me. For a lot of reasons, but the main one being that this movie decides to pull an Alien 3 and kill off all the surviving characters from the last movie, and I will just never understand this. Like, at least in Alien 3, killing off Newton Hicks allowed for a story to be taken in a certain direction that couldn't have been done otherwise. But here, this is the same movie as the last three, except this time the characters are far less interesting than they were in Dream Warriors. They pretty much just amount to 1 or 2 traits that Freddy will use to kill them. She's got asthma, he likes karate, and she likes to work out, which this movie will never let you forget.
I wonder where he works out.
Save a death. I mean, there is life after exercise.
I mean, look, I don't spend hours working out to let some night stalker beat me.
And it's not even just that they kill off these characters, it's that there's no build-up or anyone acting like it's a big deal. It's the same problem I had with Randy's death in Scream 2. As soon as they die, no one says their names again for the entirety of the film. It's just annoying because it's like this movie is trying to trick you into thinking it's actually going to be a logical continuation of Dream Warriors, just to kill them off and give us the same damn thing as last time, just without the stakes, because we don't care about these characters. This movie just feels like it's going through the motions. Like, we know how these movies work at this point, and they don't waste time. Like, they really don't waste time. We rarely get a moment to just reflect for a second, even when they're at a goddamn funeral. Remember in the last movie when we had a whole group therapy session to let the characters reflect on Philip's death? This movie's like, oh, Debbie got turned into a cockroach and died? Oh well.
Stop, don't come back.
And then there's Alice, and I don't think she's a bad main character, but she's pretty bland. And that's mostly due to the gimmick that she gains her friends' powers when they die, which is kind of stupid. Like, I'm not kidding, it is never explained why it happens. It just does, and that's that. But it just means that Alice doesn't really have a personality of her own because of how much of her personality is inherited by her friends. She also has these really cringy daydreaming segments that are really weird. The death scenes are pretty cool. As much as I hate that Joey dies, the waterbed kill was pretty cool. Of course, the effects for Debbie's death are incredible, and they're even kind of hard to watch because of how good they are. The exception being Rick, who probably has the worst death scene in the entire franchise, where he fights an invisible Freddy in a karate dojo. This is literally like this because they ran out of money and already filmed that weird funeral scene for Rick, so they just got a smoke machine and put up some bed sheets and called it a day. Like, you can feel the cheapness of this scene, and it's kind of hilarious. Freddy in this movie is entertaining as always, but the way he comes back and dies is so stupid. A dog pisses fire and it puts his body back together. Huh? And he dies after Alice shows him his own reflection and hands tear him apart from the inside. What? So yeah, I don't really like this movie that much. There's still things I enjoy. The death scenes are cool, the effects are great, and the performances are pretty solid. Well, except for that one part.
Hello, baby.
It just takes too many steps back from Dream Warriors to call it a good sequel. And even removed from that, it's still pretty boring. I don't hate it, but it ranks pretty low on my list. Well, let's just see where the next one ranks.
His mother was a God-fearing woman. His birth was an unspeakable horror.
Please don't let him do that!
His life and death have been one incredible nightmare. But now all that is going to change because Freddy wants to become a daddy. Want to make babies? When it comes to chills.
It happened while I was awake.
When it comes to screams. When it comes to pure terror. Bon appetit! No one delivers like Freddy. A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. It's a boy! When it comes to terror, remember, Freddy knows best.
A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, was released in 1989, and I ended up liking this one a lot more than I thought I was going to. Like, I went into this thinking that it was gonna be my least favorite, but I actually kinda liked it. I mean, it's still bad and doesn't hold up a candle to the original or Dream Warriors, but there's still plenty of things that I thought were a lot better than Dream Master. For starters, I like Alice's character a lot more in this movie. In Dream Master, it felt like a lot of decisions she made were because she had to for the sake of the plot, and the whole inheriting traits of her friends made it hard to figure out what she was really like. In this movie, she's a lot more of her own person, and giving her a child to protect kind of helps give her agency to defeat Freddy. I will admit, sometimes she's kind of dumb, like when she talks about Krueger to people who have no idea what she's talking about.
Nothing in that room was up to code. It's a miracle they both weren't killed.
No, he won't hurt me. He needs me alive.
Like Alice, that paramedic doesn't know what you're talking about. You've never met him, and you wonder why people think you're a crazy bitch. The other characters are alright. Dan is back from Dream Master, but he dies pretty early on, which honestly I don't really mind all that much. I know I flipped my shit about killing previous characters, but while I liked Dan, I still didn't get that attached to him. And his death had a lot more build up and payoff. And I mean, it's also kind of hard to be mad when his death scene is so fucking cool. This movie doesn't have a lot of kills, but it makes them count. They're all really creative and cool. Dan literally melds with his motorcycle and some of the coolest practical effects in the series. And it's a shame that most of it had to be cut down to get an R rating. Greta gets forcibly fed her own stomach until her cheeks get super full and she chokes out. This is another one that had to be cut down. We really didn't get to see Freddy take chunks out of her stomach, but it's still pretty cool. And then of course there's Mark's death, which is definitely the stupidest out of the three, with him getting stuck into a comic book and having Freddy turn into Super Freddy, which might be one of the dumbest scenes in the entire franchise. Even the scene where he shreds Mark after turning into a paper cutout is really cool. Like, it's stupid, but it's stupid in a fun way. Although, Mark kind of has the same problem as Debbie in the last movie, where they try so hard to force his trait to be used later in his kill.
You know, he's right. Sometimes I feel like I'm living with Melisarides.
Who?
Melisarides is this ancient guy I read about. The Phantom Prowler wouldn't have been afraid to tell her how he felt.
You know, I think it's very strange how you draw your comics loaded with blood and guts.
Get it? He likes comics!
The best way I can describe Dream Child is stupid fun. Like, if you think about this movie's premise for more than 2 seconds, it absolutely falls apart. Like, why does Freddy need a person's dreams to access other people's dreams? This was in the previous movie too, and I still don't get it. I thought the point is when you fall asleep he can get you, and when you're awake he can't. This just kind of makes the rules a lot more convoluted for no reason. You wanna know something else that's really convoluted for no reason? The climax. The last 15 minutes of this movie is a total acid trip. There's this scene where they're all chasing each other up these stairs going in different directions like fucking Scooby-Doo. Alice's unborn baby does this.
Let's go. I want to learn stuff from you. She's no fun anymore. Teach me.
Okay, maybe I was a little too harsh on the other scene.
Hello, baby.
And then Freddy's mom tells him to unleash his power on Freddy. So he vomits up a weird worm thing that makes these souls drag a baby Freddy out of him, and that apparently kills him. And that's how the movie ends. What the fuck? So yeah, I like this movie a lot more than Dream Master, but that really isn't saying much. It's still bad, but it's the fun kind of bad. The kind that makes me want to watch it again in the future. It's got alright characters that are likable enough, really cool kills, awesome effects, a decent lead, and doesn't try to fucking gaslight me like a certain other movie. It's bad, but I kind of like it. Piss off, it's my opinion.
As a boy, he was always different. No one understood him.
Go inside, honey.
But now, it's a new beginning. The beginning of the end for Freddy. Freddys Dead, the final nightmare. Great graphics. They saved the best for last.
Freddys Dead, was released in 1991, and yeah, this is the worst one. Like, oh my god, this movie is so bad. It's even worse than I remember, and I remembered it being pretty terrible. When I rewatched these movies, I wrote down things I wanted to talk about for this video. It was usually 3 or 4 things. I have 2 pages of notes for this one, and most of it is just the acting. It either ranges from incredibly uninterested.
Why do you think that? Somebody rang those bells. All right, you two look here and upstairs. I'm gonna look downstairs.
Or really over the top.
You know they bring him. We covered this. This is where they took away his child.
Lisa Zane, who plays Maggie, feels like she took a fucking bottle of Xanax before shooting each scene. It's like they purposefully chose the worst take they had every time. And her co-stars aren't much better. The only one who does a decent job is Tracy, but even she can't survive this direction. And then you have Jean Greenblatt as John Doe, who will never fail to make me laugh whenever he yells something out of nowhere.
Free me, you idiot! I'm your fucking memory!
And it doesn't help that barely anything makes sense. The entire premise of this movie is that Freddy killed every single teenager in Springwood, which is so stupid. Like, what happened to the whole needing someone else's dreams to kill people from the last two movies? Like, don't get me wrong, I thought that was pretty dumb, but you can't just throw out rules without establishing why they're gone. In fact, this movie changes the rules so much that they changed the rules that this movie created. Like, what? Freddys Dead shows that Freddy can't leave Springwood, but at the end of the movie, he wants to kill the kids after they've already left, so he pulls this line out of his ass.
Every town has an Elm Street.
And then just puts an Elm Street sign in front of the building, so now it counts. And that's not even scratching the surface of why this movie sucks. Freddys Dead has also one of the stupidest kills in the entire series with Spencer's death. Okay, maybe it's not as bad as Invisible Freddy, but it's pretty close. Spencer gets transported into a video game because we had a single scene playing a tiger game earlier, and just listen. Like, am I even watching the same series anymore? The producers said that they wanted Freddy Krueger to be like Bugs Bunny, and mission accomplished, I guess. Like, say what you want about other horror franchises, but when was the last time you saw Michael Myers advertised for Nintendo?
Now I'm playing with power!
And then there's the climax of this movie, which is just so stupid. They basically just redo the whole bringing Freddy out of the dream to kill him from the original. Oh yeah, did you know that this movie's in 3D? In the last 10 minutes? But unlike the original, this time we learned about Freddy's past and how he just stopped feeling pain as a child. What? And then we learned that magical sperm demons gave him his dream powers. Huh? And then they pull him out of the dream and stab him a lot and blow him up with a pipe bomb. I find it so odd that this is supposed to be the one that he doesn't come back from, even though he's been through a lot worse and still came back. Like, what makes this death more final than the other ones? They literally put his soul to rest in Dream Warriors and he still came back, so... who? This movie's just so awful that it's hard to put into words. But it's also kind of hilarious. There were so many times while I was watching, I just busted out laughing. Sometimes intentional.
Yeah, well, the map says we're fucked.
And most of the time not.
Where are you from?
I don't know!
It definitely crosses into the so bad it's good line. It's like an R-rated Goosebumps episode. If you just want to laugh, then it's a good time. But as a movie, and especially as one that's supposed to end the series, it is a train wreck from start to finish, and it amazes me that this actually got put into theaters. Alright, now that that's over with, let's watch a much better movie.
In a town where movies go over schedule and directors go over budget, something far more evil is out of control.
Now that the films have ended, the genie's out of the bottle. That's what the nightmares are telling me, and that's what I'm writing.
This is still a script we're talking about, right, Wes?
He's decided to cross over out of films into our reality. The only way to stop him is to make another movie.
Oh my God.
Wes Craven's A New Nightmare was released in 1994, and holy shit, this movie's a giant breath of fresh air after the last movie. And I'm not just saying that because Heather Langenkamp is back, although it certainly does help. This is easily the most unique film of the franchise, with Wes Craven back in the reins, deciding to create a very meta story about the actors and producers who made this series and having them play themselves. And honestly, it's kinda genius. It makes for a very different kind of movie than the rest of the series, and still manages to be a much better sequel to Dream Warriors than Dream Master ever was.
And no, I'm not gonna stop shitting on that movie, thank you.
New Nightmare also has probably the most likable set of characters since Part 3. Of course, we have Heather Langenkamp playing herself and probably her best performance in the franchise, but we also have Julie, whose death actually made me feel really sad, and I haven't felt that since Nancy's death in Dream Warriors. I will admit, Miko Hughes' performance as Heather's fictional son Dylan isn't always the best. He's definitely no Haley Joel Osment. I'll give him a break. It's hard to find decent kid actors, and he's fine enough. And this movie's just so good that I can get over it. I really like this version of Freddy. Okay, I know he's not actually Freddy, but he looks like him, sounds like him, and acts like him, so I'm calling him Freddy. Don't get me wrong, I like Goofy Freddy, but I like him a lot more when he's scary. And this is probably the scariest he's been since Part 2. He still has some one-liners, but there's definitely a difference from the last movie.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too!
Ever played in the cat?
The horror this time is a lot more psychological. Like, yeah, there's kills and stuff, and they are really good. Julie's even has a cooler version of Tina's death from the original. But this movie is more about Heather and her son. It's kind of like how most of the horror from The Exorcist comes from watching a mother desperately try to help her daughter. It's kind of the same thing here, except Freddy Krueger. There's plenty of references to the original, insight on how movies are made, and just has really endearing characters. I'm kind of grasping at straws here because all this stuff has already been said before. This is just a really good movie. Objectively, it's probably better than Dream Warriors, although I still like watching it over this one. This is definitely a movie I have to be in a certain mood to want to watch, rather than part 1 and 3, which I can kind of just watch whenever. But that's more about me than the movie itself, because this is easily one of the best in the franchise, and is a massive breath of fresh air after Freddys Dead. Now time for the crossover.
Warn your friends. Warn everyone.
Welcome to my nightmare.
We're not safe awake or asleep.
Why won't you die?
Freddy versus Jason.
Place your bets.
Okay, so I originally wasn't going to talk about this movie because it's a crossover, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this movie is just our Nightmare on Elm Street guest starring Jason Voorhees. This one was actually a huge deal at the time. Horror crossovers were basically unheard of, and this was being teased ever since Jason Goes to Hell. There's even a fucking weigh-in in Las Vegas to promote the movie, and it would go on to help other crossovers be possible, so I do have to commend it for that. But also because there's really not much else to commend. The best way I can describe Freddy vs. Jason is, imagine you're watching Riverdale and sometimes Freddy and Jason show up. I'm not kidding. In this hour-and-a-half movie, these two monsters don't have a single fight until over an hour in. That's more than halfway! I'll give them that the fights are pretty cool and do a really good job of showing off their unique abilities. I really like how gory and brutal it gets towards the end. But to see that, you have to watch some of the worst characters in the franchise. They're either really rude and unlikable,
Whoa, babe. Tell you about kissing me after you smoked, huh?
or really annoying.
Get real. You're not even scary. You're not even scary.
And I wouldn't mind so much if they didn't focus on them so much. This movie also reeks of 2003. There's a lot of these really weird low frame rate shots they seem to be in love with using. I don't really understand the point of these shots. Are they supposed to simulate dreaming? There's also a lot of shitty CGI that's pretty distracting, especially when both of these franchises were so well known for their practical effects. As for other stuff I think the idea of the story is pretty cool. Like, this is a believable reason for these monsters to fight each other, and the idea that the whole town of Springwood has this whole conspiracy to keep Freddy away is an interesting idea, but it doesn't go much further than being an excuse for these two to come back for another movie. But other than that, this movie's just not as good as I remember. Sure, when Freddy and Jason actually fight, it's really cool and really entertaining. But if I can just look up these scenes on YouTube and not feel like I'm missing anything by not actually watching the movie, then that to me is a pretty big problem. Some of the kills are cool, and it did inspire other great movies, but it's just a mess and not the fun kind. I'll take Alien vs. Predator any day. Alright, let's fucking end this.
I'm having these dreams, and there's this man, and he's burned.
Don't fall asleep. You have nothing to worry about.
A Nightmare on Elm Street was released in 2010. Okay, I'm gonna make this clear. I'm not against remakes. There are plenty I enjoy, like The Thing, Evil Dead, Friday the 13th, and I'm one of the few people that actually enjoyed the Child's Play remake. But goddammit, this movie's bland as fuck, even for remake standards. And it's not even the fun kind of bad like Freddys Dead, it's just boring as hell, and that's the worst thing you could possibly make someone feel during a horror film. Okay, I'll start by saying what I actually liked about the film, because there are some things. I thought the inclusion of micronaps was a cool addition, especially considering it's a real thing that would reasonably happen to these characters. And I really like the scene where Freddy attacks Nancy in the pharmacy. And I guess Jackie Earle Haley isn't awful as Freddy Krueger. He's no Robert Englund, but he's trying his best. This version of the character is a lot different than what we are used to, even if we're just comparing it to the original Freddy. The original was more like a laughing gremlin with the way he moved and talked. This Freddy is more like Batman.
No. Just me.
Answer me! No. You can't save her!
He's still got that twisted sense of humor and can have a threatening presence, so yeah, I think he does a good job in the role. And that's all the good stuff I have to say about it. I might not mind his performance, but Freddy's makeup is awful. He looks like the human characterization of syphilis. I understand they wanted to make him look more like an actual burn victim, but like, look at him. Can you seriously look at the original and say it looks worse? Because I can't. And the kills are pretty weak too. The first one is pretty gruesome, I like that one. But then we have a worse version of Tina's death, which is not nearly as effective. And then there's Jesse's death, where he just sticks his glove through his chest in a shitty jump scare. He can't even make up for it with one-liners because they're all stolen from the other movies.
How's this for a wet dream?
How's this for a wet dream? I'm your boyfriend now.
This movie's basically a Nightmare on Elm Street checklist. Get the glove coming out of the bathtub, get the girl flying through the air, get the bloody body bag being dragged away, get Freddy coming out of the wall. And maybe I would like this more if I didn't have a better version of these to compare it to. And this version of Nancy is really boring. I'm sure Rooney Mara was trying her best, but she looks so uninterested in every scene she's in. It's like she's gonna fall asleep in every scene, which I know that's what this movie's about, but I really doubt that was their intention. This movie is just so unnecessary that it hurts. The only new thing it brings to the table is that Freddy was innocent when the parents killed him, which that's a pretty cool idea with plenty of stuff you could do with that, but then it throws it away by saying at the end that, oh wait, he did it. Like, that was the one thing you could have used to give yourself a reason to exist, and it's gone like the wind. This is just a half an hour of shit you've already seen done better in the other movies. If there's any movie in this video I think you should skip, it's this one. It's just a boring waste of time. Well, it seems like we finally reached the end of this nightmare. I know I did a lot of bitching towards the end of this video, but I still do really love this series. It is always the horror franchise I can look to for some good variety of entertainment. Like, I sort of enjoy Friday the 13th, but most of these movies are so interchangeable. Freddy, even in his worst moments, will at least keep you guessing about what the fuck is going on, and for that, I do kind of have to appreciate it. It's got some low moments and some I just kind of want to forget about, but I guess the dirty spots just make the clean ones shine brighter. Well, at least that's what I'm going with. Now, if you will excuse me, I just reviewed 9 movies in one video. I'm going to get some sleep.